Alright, so what we're going to do is create a very generic character that will be used as we continue to model. So if you open Max, it probably looks like this. If I hold Alt and hit W in each view, it allows us to zoom in. So in my perspective view here, I just want to create a very simple cube, and that's going to represent the hips, and then from that I'll extrude out some legs. I'll do that with a box. If you hold Shift, you can see it lets me uniform, or Control rather, it lets me uniform scale out the bottom. So I'm holding Control and left clicking, and I'm going to bring that up. Now for the width segments, I'm going to go ahead and go to 2. Now you can see there's different things. There's display selected with edges, and so you can see now when it updates, it gives me that edge down the center. And what I'm going to do is right click, convert to Editable Poly. I want to make sure I'm in my front view here. I'm going to press 3 or 4 rather, and that selects the face mode. Select these faces here and then press delete. Now what I want to do is on the top of the modifier list, I'm just going to start typing SY, and then I'll select Symmetry. And what that'll do is anything I do on one side, it'll update on the other side. So let's go ahead and press W and just move this up a little bit on the Z-axis. And I'm going to drop down to Edit Poly, turn this on so it shows us the last element in our modifier stack. And I'm going to bring this in a little bit and bring this down. This is going to represent the root of my character. And select this side face and hit Shift and E, and then just extrude this out a little bit like that. And grab this edge and just bring it down. And bring that in. So these are essentially going to be the hips. Selecting this face, pressing R, I'm going to flatten these out. Let's bring these out just a little bit. So this is just the rough area of the hips of my character. Alright, so nothing too fancy. Then I'm going to select this face, hit Shift E, bring this down. So something like this, and then E to rotate, and then just kind of pull this back a little bit. So this would be like the cuff of the pants. Let's press 4 again, bring this up a little higher. It's getting a little small. Bring this down a little bit more, just kind of extending out the legs. Now I'm going to go down here to I'm going to press 2 to go to edge mode, and I'm going to be looking for my my slice plane here, and I'll just slice roughly 3 cuts. So something like this. Those will represent the knee. I'm going to press 1 to go to vertex mode, just kind of pull them forward just a little bit to give myself a nice slight bend in the knees. And let's pull these out just a little bit more. Just widening up those hips. You can see I've kind of got the whole side. If you need to, you can select all those faces. Alright, now I generally make the feet out of a separate object. So I'm going to go back over to this tab here, just make a box, drag out like a very simple foot, remove this one here. Now what I'd like to do with this one is convert this to an editable poly, and I want to add the mirror modifier on this guy. And if I move this over a little bit, just kind of placing it here. Now if I expand this mirror, you can see where it says mirror center, and as I move this just a little bit, it'll help me center that. And let's see, we'll stick with X here. You know, actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to approach this a different way. I'm just going to delete this for a second. I'm going to focus just on the legs, and then we'll add the feet after, just so you can see kind of how this works. So let's hit Alt W and let's go to our front view, or our side view rather. So here's our left view, And let's go ahead and turn on, we'll leave it in wireframe for now. So I'm going to press L to snap back into my left view. And now the way that we access bones is we go to this last systems tab here and we go to bones. And what you generally do is you want to start roughly where the hips are, go down to that same edge that we added for the knee, down to the ankle, and then our foot is going to be roughly here, and then off to the side here. And I'm going to press enter there, or right click rather, to lock that in. And I'm thinking he'll have some pretty big feet, and then the bend of the foot would be maybe actually, let me press W here, maybe this bend should be more up front. Now you'll notice if I try to move this around, it's in rotation mode. So well, how do we edit this? Well, up at the top I go to animation, and then I'm going to go down to my bone tools. So let's do animation here, and under create animation set, if you select bone tools, it opens this up. Now when I hit bone edit mode and I turn that on, I can actually shift this forward a little bit, and that gives me a little bit smaller of a toe area. Now I'm going to hit F for front, and I want to bring this up to the center here, and I'm just lining that up with this edge here, right? So I'm trying to center this point to just with that bone. Now I'd like to mirror this across. One thing I do want to do is just try to make anything on the left side of the body blue, right? So these bones are blue. So I'm going to double click this, and actually before I mirror it, I'm going to go over to my modifier panel here, and you'll see that we have these bone fins, and from the front view we want to extend these fins out as far as we can from the side. So here's our side fins, and as I bring this up a little bit, we'll taper it that way. I want it to cover essentially the width of that leg. So let's select this guy, same thing, width of the leg. Now these legs need to be a little bit straighter. I'm seeing how they're kind of off, so I'm going to select all those, hit R, and then just drag this to straighten it out. Pull it over just a little bit. Same thing here, hit R, straighten these edges out. See how it looks a lot cleaner? And make sure that it covers sort of the width of that bone a little bit better. Now I'm going to double click this joint, and what I'd like to do is mirror it over here. So if I turn on mirror, you'll say, oh, you might notice like there's nothing going on here. Well, we actually want it to go across the X on the Z axis, not the Y. The Y is the front. So we're going to turn this on. We want it to go across the X, and you'll see there's this offset here. I'm just going to offset it a little bit here, and then I'll straighten it out. I'm going to hit OK, and I want to make sure that it lines up with that edge there. So you might need to get nudged over just a little bit. And then for this one, I'm going to go with a green and hit OK. So let's go ahead and hit perspective here so we can see how that looks. Alright, looks pretty good. Let's go to our left view. I'd like these to be a little bit longer so they cover up more of this area. And actually, if I select both sets of these joints here, I kind of want to move those knees back. They're a little bit too forward. So notice that bone editing mode is on, so I can actually just shift, let's hold shift to select, or control rather, to select both, and let's just kind of pull both of these back a little bit. So let's go to our left view. We really just need a slight bend. We don't need it that exaggerated, so that looks pretty good, but we definitely want it to be on the same axis here. It looks like this one moved a little bit further back than the other, so we just want to make sure that's lined up. Yep, looks good. Alright, let's continue on. Oh, you know what? As I mentioned before, I forgot. I want to add the front fin. Just kind of extend that a little bit, give ourselves a little bit of room. Same thing with that back fin. Extend that out just a little bit. Same thing with this. Front. And really, we could have done this before we mirrored it, but not a big deal. Alright, let's check on this. And let's just go to our right view here and turn both of these on and just extend it so it lines up with the other one. Alright, now in our front view, I want to go ahead and add the root bone. So I'm going to uncheck this and go to bones and click in the center here. And I'm going to right click, hit W. Now what I'd like to do is I'd like it to be lined up between these two. So if you notice off on the side here, we have our align tool, or where's that mirror? Let's see. Here's our align tool. And if I select, let me hit escape, this joint here, and I click align and I click on this, you'll notice I do want the pivot point lined up here, but the target object, I want it to be lined up here, but I want it to be centered. And you'll see there's an X, Y, and Z position. So if I uncheck all three of these, notice it doesn't move on X. I just want it to be lined up on Y and the Z axis so that that point is lined up perfectly here. Now I'm going to hit OK, and I'm going to make sure that I center this a little bit here. Let's try that one more time. I want this to be straight. So that's a little bit better. Let's try that one more time. So I'm going to align this to the hips. Boom. And then I want to make sure that it's on the Y and the Z, and I'm going to hit apply, and it looks pretty good. So now when I rotate this out, let's hit P for perspective. Notice that root sits perfectly. So I'm going to actually name this root. And when we go to skin this, I'll name this a, let's see, right from over. When we go back to name these, I would name this like L underscore hip. Oops, let's make sure that L gets in there. And then I would copy this, paste this, and name this R underscore hip. Alright, so now that we have that done, let's go ahead and select our legs and generate the body of our character. So I'm going to drop down to Edit Poly here, select this face mode here, and I'm going to press Shift E to extrude, or it's this button here. Bring this up. I'm going to press L to go to my left view. And what I'd like to do is I'm going to just kind of create a nice slight bend in the character's torso and just keep extruding. Let's see, extruding this up. Here's once, twice, and then this would be maybe the top of our character. Now this kind of is a long torso. Remember, we're just generating this as a more along the lines of a test character just so that we can learn to rig. This wouldn't necessarily be the most perfect character because we're just learning kind of we should have concept art when we're modeling this and things like this, but for now we are just kind of practicing rigging, but this would be the actual way you would rig a character, and some of the stuff we would do to model. So we would normally line this up with the character, but you're at least learning the basics of it. So I've got a bunch of these cuts. Now the point behind this is these are going to be where we would draw the spine, and each joint should line up with one of these edges. So if I go to my left view here and I go over to systems on the side and I go to bones, I'm going to click this joint here, that node. And actually, let me go ahead and delete this node. I don't need this, but I do need to create bones from this joint here. And I'm going to go up to this edge, and then one more up here, and then I'm going to just press enter, or I'm sorry, escape rather. And then with my bone tools on, I'm just going to make sure that each one of these joints has a nice curvature so it follows in the center essentially of my character here. So with this, I'm going to go in, drop down Edit Poly mode, and I'm going to smooth this curve out a little bit. It's kind of a little off. Like, I like the idea of nice smooth curves like that. Alright. And same thing here. I'm going to kind of give him a little bit of more of a roundness to his chest by pulling this out just a little bit more. Seems like I've got something back here selected. I'm going to hold Shift, or Alt rather, deselect that. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Let's make sure to save often. So I'm just going to throw mine on the desktop for now and just call it character rig. Okay, so let's go back to wireframe override here, just so we can see inside of our character. Now I'm going to select this joint here, and I want to do side fins, or front fin rather, so we're looking at it from the front and the back fin. And I'm going to extend this out so they go to, I think we could just do 30, and that way we can just copy this and paste this value on each one. So same thing here. Oh, I see, because the root was a little off. So let's just do 30 for this one. Same thing here. And this last one. So now it covers essentially the width of my character. Alright, so let's go ahead and model the neck and head. So I'm going to go to Edit Poly here. And I'm going to hit Shift E, extrude this in just a little bit. So I'm going to hit R to scale that in. I want to delete these sides here so that we can bring this closer together, because we don't need an edge there. And let's scale this in a little bit more. And we are going to mirror weld this later. So let's bring this up. And then what I generally do with necks is I give it a little slight bend, because if you look at somebody from the front view, they have a slight bend in their neck area. So something like this. Shift E, extrude that up. Shift E again to just create where the, let's make sure that this is deleted. We want to extrude that out one more time so that it creates where the jaw area is. So bring that up. And really, same thing as I mentioned before, we are creating a very simple character just so we can kind of learn the process. This is something you can use as a base later and edit, and I think I'll make more videos for you on how you edit this. I call this the dummy character or the gray box character, but just so you have something like this you can see it. And then the last thing is extrude that up one more time to just create the top of the head. And I'll generally just grab this to give it a little bit of roundness and smooth this out. So let's bring this down a little bit. Now for the arms, let's do the same thing. What I do is I hit Shift E, extrude, oops, let's bring this out, sorry, and then R, bring this down, and then I rotate these shoulders up, and that's what gives me a nice little bend in the shoulder area. And let's go to our front view, Shift E, extrude this out, oops, and then we want to straighten this out this way. Let's hit R to flatten this. So we get like a very basic little bump in the shoulder there. It might be a little bit too strong. But with this, you know, you have essentially all the things you need for a generic character. So let's say the arms are roughly this long. Let's go ahead and select this edge, these edges here. And let's try a quick slice. So I can cut this up a couple times, one there, and one there. Let's hit 1 for vertex mode. Oops. There we go, escape and then W. I'm going to hit R. And notice the way I'm doing this is let's uncheck D. I'm hitting a big marquee to select all of them so they get the front and the back, and then I'm scaling this out. Alright, so let's create the joints that make up the arm now. So I'm going to go over here, go to my system settings, and here in bones I'm just going to click up here, create one for the clavicle, one for the shoulder down here, one for the elbow, and then one for the wrist, and then right click, and then press W. And then what I want to do is double click all of these, select mirror, and you can see it mirrored it across. Actually, let me hit cancel. I want to grab this clavicle and then hit mirror, and you can see it mirrored it across. Now I'm going to make the offset, let's see, bring that down just a little bit. Let's start with 0. There we go. Make sure, and that way it's offset right at that center point there, and I'm going to hit OK. Alright, I'm going to save this. Now what I'd like to do is end this particular video here because it's getting a little long, and sometimes longer videos have encoding issues on YouTube. What I'm going to do is, in the next video, create the feet and the controllers for that and talk about IK